Hello, I'm Christian Garnett, and this is Cape Media News. Today, I am joined by Colleen Evans from MSPCA. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Christian. How are you?
I'm doing great, and how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
I asked you to join me on this call to talk about the falling pet adoption rates here on Cape Cod and nationally. Could you tell me anything about that?
Yeah, so I would say it's primarily for dogs. We're seeing a huge decrease in adoption rates. And in turn, there is a larger number of euthanasia rates across the nation as well. Many shelters are overwhelmed and overrun with dogs and don't have any areas for them. So it's been a really big challenge. We are also seeing cat numbers increasing again. There was a lull post-COVID. I think a lot of that had to do with cats were breeding outside, but people weren't interacting and going outside and finding those kittens and bringing them into shelters. That's just
Mm-hmm.
something that I noticed when I was in New York City during the pandemic, working in a shelter there. We just saw less people out, less people bringing us cats. So those rates are increasing more. But especially for dogs, it's just an unprecedented number of them, and shelter space is really limited. Foster-based rescues are overwhelmed, so it's been challenging.
And what is the perceived reason? Why are the dog adoption rates falling?
I think there's a lot of different theories as to why, but I don't know if it'll ever be super clear what the number one reason is. I think there are a few things and factors that come into play. Housing, the cost of living is so high, and housing is really hard to come by, especially, I mean, we see that in Cape Cod specifically. It's the
Yeah.
housing market's crazy, and rental properties are hard to come by or hard to afford, and most of them are not pet friendly. So I'd say housing is a huge problem across the nation. Cost of living and inflation is also really hard. It's hard for people to go to the grocery store and feed themselves based on their salaries. And so adding in another animal into that is also really challenging. And then a lot of people did adopt during COVID. So those homes kind of filled up potentially. And so I think it's just been hard to know exactly why there's been this big drop off. But I think those are potentially some theories that have been gone around as to why.
That makes a lot of sense. If you can't afford somewhere to live, you definitely not only can you not afford to adopt a pet, but you have nowhere to put them. So that makes sense. I never really thought about that. This housing crisis is directly affecting pet adoption.
Yeah, it's
And
incredibly profound. It's very challenging I mean, the families that can't find housing, it's really hard. And then a lot of these families would be wonderful pet owners. It would be great for them to be connected with an animal, but they just simply can't because they can't afford the housing. And then, or they're being moved out of their homes because the person is selling their space. The place that they're moving is not pet friendly, and then they're having to surrender to the shelter. So I think there's a lot to play there with the housing crisis.
you mentioned COVID pet adoptions earlier, and that's also something that I've been curious about. What did you notice about pet adoptions during the
Yeah,
COVID shutdowns?
Yeah, we saw a huge number of people looking to adopt during COVID. People were looking to fill that void of not being able to interact with other humans. And so adopting a pet was a big thing for a lot of people. People also had a lot more time than they previously had when they were going to the office 5+ days a week. And so they were able to introduce animals into their lifestyles. Especially for cats, we still see a huge number of people looking for cats, especially in Massachusetts, which is the highest cat owning state. So
Really?
we can't keep cats here because they get adopted so quickly. So we do a lot of relocation where we bring cats in from other parts of the country and adopt them out because we have such a high demand for cats. So in the pandemic, it was even higher, and it was every cat that we would get would be gone really quickly, even if they were a senior or had medical challenges or were a little bit on the funkier side personality wise. And so that definitely was significant, especially for cats and for dogs. I wouldn't say small animals like guinea pigs and rabbits. We saw a huge change, but we definitely saw that both here and then again when I was in New York City, we saw that as well. Lots of people looking to adopt.
So you're saying this problem is mostly affecting dog adoptions, not really cat adoptions.
Not here, at least not on the Cape from what I have seen. I mean, there is also the Animal Rescue League in Brewster, so I'm not sure if their perception is the same as ours. But
Mhm.
yeah, cats, we really have been able to move them through very quickly. It's just dogs that have been staying for a bit longer. And again, Massachusetts is a very cat loving state. So I think we have a lot more homes looking for cats, but there are plenty of other places across the US that are overrun with cats as well.
Colleen, thank you so much for joining us on this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I'm Christian Garnett, and this is Cape Media News.